this one. So it might have been confusing saying we're just not going to go into the ether that amount, but you still need cash even for our own DAs, or if we're going to donate, it comes out of somewhere. Yeah.
So would it be better to be worded that contribute
It's a donation
to the value of the $4,000 if that's what you were intending?
Yeah. Just again, my first impression was that we were waiving a $28,000
charge
invoice to them. Was how it was presented from my first perception. I was unaware that we were going to be actually have to pay out money to cover some external charges that they've had along the way to get to this DA. And just in conversation, I say that I think we need to be supporting our health system, and we need to be supporting everything along that way. Now, how we look at doing that changes the perception. I certainly have no problem in waiving something that's a fee as such a thing, but are we in a position now, or do we need more information to make a decision on it? I mean, it's up to councillors.
I spoke to Dr. Aon quite a lot, and he understand that he understood what he messaged to me was that it has been paid, lodged, why isn't it advertised? My information from staff is that it's been put on the planning portal. Well, Susan will comment on the technicalities, but there's been no fee. We've raised an invoice sent to the project manager, hasn't been paid, so it hasn't got advertised. But yeah, he's chasing that up right now, Dr. Aon, from this morning. I said it's not even paid yet, that's why it's not advertised, separate to whether the Shire are going to give him any support. So he's following up, where that process is up to. So that it comes back to that donation aspect though, because his intent was, I can't wait that long for council meetings and I've got to get the project moving, which is fair enough. It's been in the wings a long time, but he made the call then that he was going to pay that and then hope that he'd get council support in some way going forward, which is today.
Thank you. Susan, would you like that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors will remember, I think it was February or March, that as a council, you were the consent authority that approved the original application. This is another application. The fees that were paid with the original application go some way to cover the cost of the staff assessment of that particular matter. The application has been lodged on the planning portal, and I'm not sure whether or not the fees have been paid yet, but the value of the works is the same as the one that was lodged previously. So development application 7 for this financial year, and we're now up to 300 and something. So the value has been notified as being the same. So I just wanted to let you know that that's the clarification. I figure that's their budget for the overall project. And to be honest, it's very unusual in my 25 years in local government. It's very odd to see, sorry, I'll start that statement again. This is the first time I've seen where the applicant has requested the council to fund consultants' fees. Thank you.
And whether, like as mentioned, whether the council wanted to defer that till October and get more information, because my understanding is that it's not going to hold up the DA lodgement. He's intended to go ahead and do that anyway, so it's probably just a miscommunication on their end as to why the invoice hasn't been paid or whatever. But he was going to chase that up. So with council, with the vagaries around the amounts and where the process is up to. But Steve did have a comment.
No. Councillor Whitechurch, would you?
Moving a motion?
Yeah, I don't know, councillor, whether it's just me that's sort of a little bit unsure of what we were paying versus what we are going to pay, as opposed to what we're going to waive. I think that's two different things. I appreciate that the Dr. Aon wants to get this rolling, and the town wants to get it rolling, obviously. Gets back to what Councillor Kennedy said about making things happen and getting stuff going. We are saying that we're going to support all this stuff.
Would you be happy to defer
or waive the council's costs towards this, not to make a donation, but to waive any council costs?
Yeah,
Just at the DA.
Well, it'd be more than the DA, it'd be inspections and stuff.
October, yeah.
If it's not going to hold up the DA process or the building.
Well, I believe that's the case, so we'll go for a deferral.
on that proviso? If we're not holding it up, then
If we're not holding it up.
Otherwise,
Happy to move that. We've got a seconder to that. All in favour?
yeah.
Against? Carried.
who was the seconder? Sorry.
Kent.
Andy, thanks, yeah.
Had me speech
Yeah,
already.
deferred all. Thanks. Yep, good.
keep it in your head.
This next report relates to the grant funded project to upgrade the corridor Foreshore and provides a recommendation to Council for the funding of Council's $740,000 contribution to the project. As detailed in the report, the recommendation is to utilise the underspend from the Corowa Aquatic Centre, which came in under budget. So utilise that $320,000 towards this project, and to access $420,750 from the developer contributions, which are restricted funds, and utilise those funds towards this project. So the recommendation is laid out in the report to note the contents of the report, allocate the $420,750 in accordance with Section 409 of the Local Government Act, and to reallocate $320,000 from the capital budget, within the capital budget, from the Corowa Aquatic Centre to the Corowa Foreshore Upgrade Project.
Thank you. Moved by councillor Longmire, seconded by councillor Law. Any questions or comments?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Longmire.
I'd like to congratulate Mr. Carmichael on an underspend. Another one, and congratulate your team. It's been a good saving.
Thank you, councillor Longmire. Keep up good work. Councillor
Give me the money and I will.
Meikle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification to the Director, this is actually our contribution to about a 1.5 million grant that for the total, for that entire project, and this is just our contribution to it.
Correct, yes, it's a $2.5 million project in entirety, which Council's contributing $740,000,
Yep.
and the balance of $1.7 million is coming from the New South Wales Government.
And there's a time limit on that.
A time limit to deliver the project. That there are timelines in the funding agreement. Yes,
Unfortunately,
for this
there always
project.
is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Whitechurch.
Yes, I just commend the team for getting it all to where it's got to for the development of the foreshore. It's going to be a great project when it's all done. I just wanted to make note of, bring up about the Lions Park toilets down in River Street, South Corowa. The Lions Club have still got this handful of money that they had to do it, and they're waiting for council's co-contribution that was promised some years ago. I just want to make sure that's still sitting there. I know the directors are aware of it, but what do you remember, Steve? Was it 40,000 something, or 60,000 co-contributed?
Something like
To
that.
finish that park and boat ramp and everything off. So
Excellent. Councillor Long.
Yeah, write a reply if it's right, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the things that we need to look at very near future is the aspect of where the flood level comes when this project is designed and put together, because I think there might be a chance that the water level will tell us a lot of things, if that makes sense.
And in line with that, the flood study's underway here, isn't it?
Yeah.
In relation, which will help that. Can I just ask on that one, there was the 2.5, we're actually going to use that as leverage for that bigger grant. Where's that at?
So we used this total project as leverage for a Building Better Regions Fund application to upgrade infrastructure at the Ballpark Caravan Park. So that application was submitted earlier this year, and we're waiting for announcements. So we are hopeful of announcements prior to Christmas. I think it might even be in October.
Mid-October.
Yeah, mid-October is we're thinking the timing will be on that.
Thank you. Thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried.
8.7 relates to industrial land sales in the Mulwala Industrial Development. So at the March 2021 meeting of Council, you sought a further report regarding the potential sale of lots 47 and 48 in the industrial estate. So this report provides you some further detail on that potential sale. So in summary, the potential purchaser has indicated they no longer wish to purchase that land, and they've entered into an agreement with an existing landowner within the estate for a lease to purchase arrangement. We have been advised by a contracted real estate agent that there are other purchasers waiting in the wings who are happy to pay the set price that Council has already established. So the recommendation to you is to note the report.
Thank you. So moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments, councillors? I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried.
Well done.
8.8 relates to the 2022 Australia Day event. So council hosts an annual event in the Federation Council area, and it rotates where the venue is between our key population centres. So there's some recommended changes as a result of considering the event planning and ensuring that we're able to have a COVID-safe event. So the particular two particular changes are that we're recommending to replace the community event and community project of the year award categories with a local community group of the year. So the reason for this is that during COVID, it's been very difficult to have events and projects, or for community events, for community groups, to have events and projects. So changing that to be a local community group of the year, we thought would be an appropriate way to recognise a community group in the next round of Australia Day Award celebrations. But also for council to agree to use a single community group to provide the catering and activities to assist with delivering a COVID-safe event in January next year. So that's what the recommendation is before you.
Thank you. So moved by councillor Law, seconded by councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments? I'll put it. Councillor Meagle.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, Mr Mayor. To scale down the event and to have only deal with one community for the event, and then is there a process of that's obviously not the extent of having marching bands and whatever else that we've had, and a host of activities, but to have a simplified event is what I'm understanding.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Meagle.
Yeah.
So we've had a look at what it takes to conduct a community event, and in a COVID-safe manner, and you know the goalposts keep moving, as we all know, and so there is significant uncertainty about what will a COVID-safe event look like in January. But we need to plan for what we know now, and so that the proposal is to be a scaled-down event that we can have a level of confidence in, be a COVID-safe event and meets the expected requirements.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. If there's nothing more, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Agenda item 8.9 is the grant management policy. So in June 2021, you adopted a grant management policy in principle. It's been released for public exhibition, and it's now recommended to you for final adoption.
Thank you. So moved by councillor Meagle, seconded by councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Agenda item 8.10 relates to the New South Wales Regional Sports Facilities Fund. So just providing you with an update that we're currently actively supporting applications to this fund from the Corowa Rutherglen Football Netball Club and from the Corowa Civic Bowls Club. So looking at two applications going in there. We understand there is a potential further one from the Corowa Cougars going directly into that fund. So the recommendation to you is to note the report on this funding opportunity and the potential applications.
Thank you. So moved by councillor Longmire, seconded by councillor Law. Any questions or comments? Councillor Longmire.
Yeah, in correspondence that I've seen somewhere, it doesn't matter, but this opportunity's been on for a while, and it's been dedicated in lots of ways to the northern part of the state. I'm not sure why, but it's good. It's good to see it down here now. I'm not sure why it's been like that. Somebody here might be able to explain it, General Manager or yourself. Director Shannon, I'm not sure, but I've seen over the journey the last couple of years such a thing happening, especially for the league and opportunity, rugby league and these places.
Yeah, not aware. Looks like it's only the second round. Yeah.
There was a tunnel cut in the Blue Mountains.
Sorry?
There was a tunnel cut in the Blue Mountains.
Get the money out. Yeah.
Any further comments, questions? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Agenda item 8.11 is the Economic Development Strategy. So I'm pleased to present the final Federation Economic Development Strategy for 2021 to 2025 for adoption. This strategy has been developed following an extensive community engagement process with local businesses and with the broader community. So it enables council to take a strategic approach to its economic development, and it has 7 key strategic themes that are built into that strategy. So the recommendation before you is to to note the report and to adopt the Federation Council Economic Development Strategy.
So moved by councillor Wales, seconded by councillor Whitechurch. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried.
And my final report for today is the Economic Development Implementation and Resourcing Plan. So we had a consultant assist us with developing the Economic Development Strategy, and at the same time, they developed an Economic Development Strategy, or the Implementation and Action Plan, so that council could understand how it could roll out the Economic Development Strategy through the council area. So in that plan, there were 3 options put forward by the consultant. So one, retaining existing levels of resourcing. Option 2 was increasing it to what it saw as being local government area benchmarks, and option 3 was a higher level of resources. So 2 of those would require additional resources to be allocated to our economic development activities. So council officers are aware of the financial constraints council is currently operating in, and came up with a 4th alternative, which is what we are recommending to you today, which is that we effectively undertake a small restructure in our economic development area. We reprioritise what the goals are about, and that will enable us to deliver key elements of the economic development strategy within existing financial constraints. So the recommendation before you is to note the report, to adopt the implementation and resourcing plan, and to endorse option 4 that I've just spoken about, which provides a restructured model of service provision, with the option, the ability for council to review that in future years if it wishes to change the level of resourcing dedicated to economic development activities.
Thank you. So moved by councillor Longmire, seconded by councillor Law. Questions or comments? Councillor Meagle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Ms Shannon, is there any opportunity for grant funding or project funding that would enable to increase the resources for economic development? We all understand how important that is, and it's a shame that just at this point in time we're unable to afford an increase in resources. Or is it because it's purely operational we would struggle to attract funding of any sort? But I was just putting the question out there that is there somewhere that we could grab some funds that we could deliver more of that economic strategy than just the key elements?
Thanks, Councillor Meagle. That is on our agenda. So we've done the strategic thinking about what the approach is and what the ideal actions are to undertake.
Yeah.
So that gives us a good base to be able to seek grant funding when opportunities come up. They don't come up regularly like roads funding, for instance, but they do come up from time to time, and we'll be well placed. And we've done the thinking around it. So we'll be putting submissions in where we can to see if we can increase the funds we've got available.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Longmire.
Yeah, if no one else is able to speak. I actually support the recommendation really because in the gross domestic product that we attune to in our Shire area, agriculture, fishing and mining comes in as the number 1, which is enormous. Our next benefit for the lifestyle and community living is tourism, which I think we've allocated about 600,000 plus on that opportunity. So certainly in the future, now that we've got like a master plan that's been very well done, I believe that report's very well done. So when the opportunity steps up, as Councillor Meagle has identified, and you have as well, to be able to jump forward and see what we can do. But I believe that certainly I looked at the green option. I think option 2, I think it may have been, where it was up to 550,000. I think we need to have that in the back of our minds and see how things unfold going forward. And if the opportunity arises where we can step up and say, yeah, we can go further and better still. I think it's a work in progress opportunity, if that's right, because I believe that economic development is a real catalyst to complement the other 2 forms of gross domestic product that we have at the moment.
Thank you very much. Nothing further, councillors. I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
And against, carried. And thank you, Joe, for that very big report.
Thank you,
Well
Mr.
done. Deputy Mayor, would you step up for a second? Okay.
Could go down to Joe or something.
Okay, that is stuck there for a moment.
Welcome, Chair.
Welcome to the chair.
Back to our agenda here.
Up to
Planning.
Planning Director of Development and Environmental Services report.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Item 9.1, councillors, is the building approvals for complying and construction certificates from August. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? We'll move for report. Moved by Councillor Law, second by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments? All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Item 9.2 is development applications approved under delegation during the month of August. Again, happy to take any questions.
Councillor Longmire.
Mover.
Second.
Second by Councillor Kennedy. Questions or comments? Councillor Longmire.
I think what's pleasing to note in the impact of the corona and other variables, we're looking at in 1 month here, 8 or 9 new dwellings being proposed or requested to build in our Shire area. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it certainly is. Any further questions? Councillor Long, do you have a question? No further questions or comments? All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Item 9.3, council, is an update on the regional and state significant development applications that are currently lodged. There's no movement on the state significant Halong Sand and Gravel application. Development application for the subdivision in Mulwala. There is a separate report to this council meeting regarding another VPA offer. And for the solar farm in Mulwala, we're just at the point where that will be going to council to the panel. Hopefully in October.
Council's got a recommendation there for that report. Councillor Meagle, was it? Second, Councillor Law. Any questions or comments? All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes, carried.
Item 9.4 is regarding council's alcohol-free zones policy. Essentially, this is a regulatory tool that's utilised both by council and other law enforcement agencies within the council area, and the recommendation is to put the re-establishment of those zones out on exhibition for public comment and also to seek agency comment.
Moved.
Moved by Councillor Law, second by Councillor Wales. Any questions or comments? Councillor Longmire.
Question in regard to Rowers Park.
Yep.
There's a clause in there which announces the fact New Year's, around that New Year 24-hour period, that's alcohol is banned. But other than that, there is an opportunity for alcohol in Rowers Park or not?
Yeah, so when you establish an alcohol-free zone, you can get that waived, and there's delegated authority to the general manager to be able to waive those restrictions. And during that event, there's a time limit put on it, and the signs are covered up for that period, and the police and other
So you're
compliance
talking,
authorities are notified. So they have to notify us that there's going to be alcohol consumed.
okay, so when we look at other circumstances, and I bring to the definition of Noriel Park in Albury, where they have a opportunity there for restaurant there and a whole raft of things where people can go and have a picnic.
Yep.
In that opportunity, I've seen it many, many times where there's people everywhere, and in a frame of good mental health capacity, people really have a relaxed time beside the river and all the rest of it, with dogs and, on leads, and everything's done properly with kids and everything. So in this, they are allowed to consume alcohol there. My understanding is in that under conditions, but we won't have that over here.
Well, that'll be up to council, and that's something that we can explore
Yeah.
through the exhibition process. And if we get submissions from the public or from, as I said, other enforcement bodies, then we can look at
it
bearing
as a consideration.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Isn't Rowers Park only restricted to New Year's Eve?
I'm sorry?
No.
Australia Day.
Well, it's only restricted to one day that you can't drink alcohol.
That's what
The rest of the time you can.
it's okay.
The restriction only applies to what it says on the sign. Australia Day.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to clarify. Thank you.
Just before we put that, councillors, one question I did want to bring to council was, we had a liquor record in the former Coral Shire. I'm not sure if that carried through to the Federation Shire or where that dropped off, but it doesn't seem to be active now. Do we have any?
I have no idea on that. I think when the councils merged, the liquor records were then across different boundaries, so they were trying to work out how that could work again with the councils.
Yeah.
So prior to merger, there were two separate liquor records that the two councils were involved in.
I've been to a liquor accord meeting.
Yep.
At the golf club one night, because I was the representative down there to all the clubs down there, and
Yep.
there was and then the pubs. Actually, the pubs from Yarrawonga come across to it as well. But I've only ever been to one since 4 years.
Just,
Yeah.
Good point.
I think what's going to happen is that the liquor record needs to be reformed, and this would be something that would obviously go to the liquor record and would be talked about. And I think what Councillor Longmire was talking about would be something that would be discussed if there was a need to have and want of the community to have a liquor in that certain area. So I know that from my position at the clubs, they're looking to try and reform that. And I was talking to the licensed police the other day, so I'll work through that. Councillor Wales.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, to be there. I was like Councillor Kennedy. I used to go to the liquor court, and Peter Dunn from the ski club used to run them, and they were good value. And they had guest speakers come down, like from the liquor commission and that, but they were good. I don't know what happened. They just sort of dropped off, didn't they? Yeah, good value though. They should bring them back in.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up that through my other hat that I wear. So, Council got a recommendation there. We've got to move.
Tricky, isn't it?
I have law in Wales, I had.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Law in Wales.
Yeah.
Yeah. No further questions or comments. Put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Item 9.5 is enforcement action on a property in Rand. As it involves an individual, it's recommended that this report be deferred.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Longmire, second by Councillor Meagle. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Item 9.6 we've dealt with, and 9.7 we've dealt with. Bear with me while I scroll. I think I'm on the right one. No, wrong one.
9.8.
55.
Okay, so item 9.8 is a voluntary planning agreement offer for development application 2020-37 for a subdivision in Marwala. Before you, councillors, is the offer. Like with the other one that was discussed previously, there's a lot of financial risk associated with the offer that's currently on the table. It does not outline all the infrastructure that would be required, and it would be a complex matter. This has come about as the panel requested that an offer formally be made to council, and that council consider the offer prior to a report being finalised for the planning panel. Happy to take any questions.
Council, we've got a recommendation there that on the motion that council decline the voluntary planning agreement offer is associated with development application to 020/37 as a financial risk associated with the offer and cannot be adequately defined and therefore is not considered to be in public interest to accept the offer. Council, we have a mover of that recommendation, moved by Councillor Meagle, second by Councillor Law. Any questions or comments? Councillor Kennedy.
Here I go again. Righto. Same thing. We've got an option there, option 2, to enter into negotiations regarding the VBA. So we're actually going just to knock it back, not enter into negotiations. This, as far as I'm concerned, this hasn't been a court yet, has it, or hasn't?
This one goes before the joint Western Regional Joint Planning Panel. I think that's right. They have requested. We've had again, it's the same applicant as last time. We have tried negotiating the staff internally with them, and it's not till we get to the point where we're either in court or at the planning panel that they seem to come to the table and are prepared to speak with council staff in particular. That particular subdivision, as an assessing officer, it has a lot of merit, but there are so many risks to council financially long term with the offer that's on the table that hence the recommendations before you. There is an option to enter into negotiations, but I believe that we would need to ensure that the volunteer planning agreement was in place and all matters resolved before the application was determined. So it will waylay the final determination on the application. Having said that, the panel can ask for it to be brought forward now, and that is something that they have requested. It's been in for over a year. We had the briefing session in July. Adrian was present at that, and he may want to make some comment on that. So again, council, this may be taken out of our hands. If council wish to go down a negotiation path, they can, but just know that the panel may take that role out of your hands.
Like you got scenario 1 and scenario 2. Like scenario 1's 500 lots over 10 years, and the estimation there was going to cost council $2 million for 10 years of investment in the town, 10 years of growth, in Mulwala. So like $2 million for 10 years of growth is not a lot of money, but I think, and especially when we were just told by Mr. Shannon that we got this sewer fund and sitting there doing nothing. You know, it seems that we could probably grab $2 million out of that and upgrade the sewer as to keep our towns going. Like, it's, then you got here that 1,000 lots, so 29% of the overall cost for the model growth of Mulwala for initially 1,700 lots. Lots are actually in that subdivision.
There's 495. However, councillor, if we were just to do a 10-year model and we base it on 500 lots, then they would be paying the full cost of the infrastructure. The other thing to realise with the provision of infrastructure, and my engineering director next to me may want to comment on this, when you develop infrastructure, especially for water and sewer, the growth is not exponential. So if they put in, I think it's a 300 mil main, and I'm really going to need some help here, that will allow growth for, say, your 500 lots. If you enlarge that to a 400 mil main, it may take you to 1,500 lots because the provision is exponential. It can carry an increased flow rate the bigger the pipe size. So did I explain that correctly?
You've done well.
Thank you. Make an engineer of me yet. So the cost that he's put forward, he's done it on a very simple mathematical calculation, whereas the actual cost of providing that infrastructure for the 10 years of growth is far more than 29%.
Yeah. So where do we envisage Mulwala growing at the moment? Because at the moment, this is the last block of land where it can go, because you're surrounded by the factory on the other side, and you've got to keep coming out towards Cora. Realistic.
So there's a presentation coming this afternoon in the workshop regarding there's not, but we've got our growth strategy this afternoon.
Part of it might be there.
Yeah, and so we'll be discussing all those areas. And to be honest, for this council, the limiting factor in development into the future is our water and sewer infrastructure.
And we know that. We do know that.
Roads play a certain part in it. Environmental constraints play a certain part, but for this council, financially, the limiting factor is water and sewer.
Because we sat in this council meeting a couple of meetings ago and moved a motion to contact Defence and try and get the Factory Hill released. It's no good doing it because we can't do it.
That's a little
wasting our time, pretty much.
That's not correct.
Yeah, we've done a little bit of analysis on that, and because it's within the serviced area, there is still capacity. So once you go across where this development is, it's a long way from the treatment plant. So you've got a certain amount of head pressure that we have to have, and it's not just for you guys having your showers and what have you. It's actually so we can protect those properties with such things as fire hydrants.
Yeah.
So in the event that there's a fire, we know there's going to be that service available and the head pressure to be able for the equipment to be able to be used in the event that there's a fire.
I know my flat. I've been there all my life, and it falls away from the lake. So we've got a pump. We've got the most pumping stations in the whole shire.
And that has been another issue historically. What seems to have happened with subdivisions is they've been dealt with in isolation. So the infrastructure that's been put in place has only been put in place to service that particular subdivision. It hasn't been done as a holistic approach, saying, okay, we're going to have another 1,200 lots in Mulwala. This is the size pump station we need, and then you develop your developer contributions plans. We don't have that level of detail at this stage.
Developers only doing 500 shouldn't have to pay for the 1,700 lots.
No, I agree with that. But he's got 10 years growth, so we believe he should pay for 10 years growth. So that, in essence, is
a couple of million.
Yep.
And I guess that's the point. At that briefing was made very clear, like as Susan outlines, pretty good on merit-based design. It's got a lot of things going for it in the layout of it all, and the owner has I think worked pretty hard to get a really good outcome for the community in terms of the space that's been created, the lots. So, but the point about the contribution amount came up in the chair of the panel in the briefing. It's not fair. Why would we put 100% of the cost of 1,500 lots on a developer that's only going to put 500 out there? And the agreement, it was only a briefing, but we said, no, that would be, the intent, even though I've heard other councils do that, because they might say, we're not going to develop out there till 30 years' time. Our long-term financial plan, our sewer and water plan says that in 30 years we'll have the money to keep going out there, but if you want to go early, you'll pay 100% of that, and that gets taken up because high growth areas. But with our position, that 30% or that 29% ratio is very crude analysis of just straight out mathematics on lots versus total lots,
Yes.
not on that.
They're saying 1,700 and they're only doing 500, so they should only have to pay for a third of it.
Yeah, so they've come up with, but a third's, what is a third? So it's about whether a third is purely on the lot breakups or is it on the total cost and the design. So the other thing that came out was with our court matter, not delving into that, but just the principle of the fact that there's no QS being done on those costings. So we've done our best at staff to work with developers as the information comes forward to try and say it might cost this or that, and it's not picked out of the sky, but to be signing into an agreement where it binds future councils and future ratepayers, you want to have a quantity surveyor report which would really agree to find the cost. So it's not quite there, but the chair of that panel, as Susan said, has put the foot down and said they want to have a decision. When's the next council meeting sort of approach a few months back. So that was where it gets to today. And a bit like Susan had said, our director, it didn't have the chance to do a lot of going back and forwards, putting counter offers back. They haven't set the panel date, though, have they? I understand.
No, so there was a time frame they had to have the additional information because there was a lot of outstanding information for this application as well. All that had to be provided within 2 weeks of the hearing, the briefing session, which they did, and they also had to formulate and have to council a VPA offer. Now, the offer that was put in front of us just lacks so much information. I do not know where the panel will go with this. The last panel hearing I sat in, the chair actually told the applicant to withdraw the application or they would refuse it. And I feel that may be an option that will happen here. It then means that they can resubmit their application and we can start the negotiations. I know it's frustrating. Believe me, it's frustrating on our side, and I'm sure it's very frustrating to the owner of the property in particular. But we need to get these things right, otherwise we're going to put forward a legacy that will be detrimental to council long term.
Thank you.
At least if the panel went that way, the negotiations restart on the VPA, there is an offer there. So it's not like starting with no amount, there's an offer of
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a commencing point, yeah. Mr Mayor.
Excuse me, Chair, could I ask a question to the director, please? Just for clarity, I'm sorry I missed out on a lot of that and I'm just trying to clear my own head, but in this case, what are your thoughts on trying to come to some formal agreement? Like, we've seen a situation this morning where we've come out and said that this is not good enough, and which in that scenario had gone too far. We didn't seem to get what we wanted, so that message is a good, strong message. I'm just wondering, in this situation, before it goes to the panel, do you see an opportunity of maybe having a conversation around this is what we expect, and then if we don't get what we want, same deal as before?
This is going to be another complex VPA, and I think we'll be looking at least 3 to 4 months of negotiation, and the panel want this determined by the end of this year. So I think the panel will make the determination no matter which way council resolve today.
Okay. Any further comments?
I just really want to gauge what the appetite in the room in chamber today would be if we went for the renegotiation option. And correct me if I'm wrong, just to get some commentary from you, Director Appleyard. In terms of the renegotiation, just a couple of pointers. We've had discussion before about the environmental impact study and the influence that it has on a VPA. I presume that has been completed for this particular project.
There's a statement of environmental effects that has been provided. We now know that there are some environmental impacts and they will need to do offsets. There are a number of other issues associated with this matter. So there's environmental offsets that they will have to enter into. In addition, we had no idea what they were proposing for the green space, and there are still some stormwater problems that they can be worked out, but we'd still need to negotiate those particular matters. And that all needs to be clarified and would need to be included in this VPA offer. There is also offsite works for upgrade of intersections and North Street in particular, and that hasn't been addressed yet either.
So the 4 items to be addressed if we were to go into renegotiation, go down that path, would be the 4 items that are in our business papers.
Yep.
And then it would look like a more complete VPA.
Yeah, and then we'd have to go to quantity surveyors on both sides to determine. The other thing to realise, councillors, under the legislation, so under the EP&A Act, the full cost of this would need to be borne by the developer, not the community or the council. And that's just in the preparation of the voluntary planning agreement.
Yeah, as I said, when I stood up, first up, we'd be interested to get the appetite to in chamber today to see if we could go into some form of renegotiation. But as you have highlighted today, we might go down that track today, pass the renegotiation recommendation, but then, as you said, the JIPP may not sit comfortable with that anyway. So, yeah, decision might be out of our hands.
And just the point that's been made on a few other developments too is about what level of detail council are asking for after needing on these scale developments. So master plan, even level estate planning is probably where it needs to get to, and this has been a challenge all along with this one and the other one, because look, we can talk about the amount, but until we know what the actual is getting proposed to be built, and then you cost that. So it's always been that cart before the horse almost approach, where we've got to look at what is proposing to come before either the panel or the court or the council, what is agreed and what can work with agencies and others, and then what's that going to cost. But we're sort of, it's always been coming along together and not one leading the other, which needs to be, the design needs to be agreed and acceptable, and then what's the assets that are going to go in, and then what's the cost. It sounds simple, and it does work if it's done in that order, but it's not, in this case, coming forward in that way.
Yes, I was just going to, our General Manager's just sort of touched on what I was going to mention, was I think we're all agreeing that we want development and we want everything to go ahead, and unfortunately the developments we've got on our books at the moment have got some issues. I, like Councillor Kennedy, and General Manager just touched on it, we know what's got to happen. We know that the pipes have to go from here to there. I would have thought with a voluntary agreement, negotiations would have been, or talks happening prior to a VPA being presented to council. So the fact that we're now asking for the negotiations, or the chance of negotiations, I'm thinking, well, surely there must have been talks and negotiations before that, before they come up with a voluntary agreement to come to us.
So again, councillors, 17th of November last year, we put forward a request to meet with the owner of the land and the applicant to discuss a voluntary planning agreement. We got nothing. We also requested additional information. I actually sent a second letter 3 months later saying that if they didn't provide the information within 2 weeks, we would determine the application and refuse the application. We got the information in, and then the panel called the hearing. It's, from a staff point of view, it is very frustrating. We know what needs to be done. We try and assist the developers, highlight what the issues are going to be, try and work with them. But in this particular instance, we've had very little luck with getting the applicant in particular to the table.
And I guess part B of my question there was the option we've got is to decline the voluntary agreement. For clarity, if we decline the agreement, what does that do with the development application or the?
It will most likely be rejected by the panel.
Yeah. So I mean, and then where does it go? Does it turn into a potato farm, or does he?
Oh, he can come back and try again. It's zoned to be developed.
Yeah.
So, with all the developments that have come before council, there's always the potential to develop. It's zoned correctly. We expect that there's going to be development there, and part of the growth strategy work that we're going to be doing over the next 18 months will identify what hard decisions are going to have to be made for the entire council area and where your funding is going to have to go if you want to have a certain amount of growth in this council area.
So I guess where I was alluding to, sorry, Mr. Mayor, was if that's going to happen, potentially could happen, rejection, knockback, we decline the voluntary agreement, then they come back and want to develop,
Yep.
eventually we're going to be to the point of negotiating.
Yep. So
Why aren't we bringing that forward as Councillor Kennedy's negotiation point? And I know you've done a hell of a lot of work and we hear that side of the story. I'm sort of saying, yes, are we at a point to be?
the biggest issue we have with both the two large subdivisions is one was taken to court, and this one, again, council aren't the consent authority. The consent authority is the panel. So the panel want this determined one way or another, and so they have forced their hand on this. We can enter into negotiations. I can, if that's the will of the council, I'll go back to the Secretariat and say that was the will of the council, and then they can either say, okay, we'll give you this amount of time to negotiate a VPA, or they'll say, no, it's coming to us before the end of the financial year, or end of the year.
Mr. Carmel?
Yeah, just a couple of things the council needs to be aware of is that we can put in water mains to service this subdivision, don't have any problem. I think a 300 mil water main will service this adequately, will provide for 500 lots. That will then stifle development in Mulwala. You won't go any further towards Corridor, as we said a minute ago. Ideally, you would put a bigger main in to do it. If you decide not to and you just say, right, I will accept this VPA, when the next developer comes along and he says, I want to put another 500 lots beside it, and you say, well, we'll run another 300 mil water main. Unfortunately, there is not enough room in the road reserve to keep running 300 mil water mains. So unless we bite the bullet and develop for future and make provision for your 1,700 lots or whatever you want to have out to the north, and somebody contributes towards that, not the way that they've worked out mathematically, as the General Manager says, but it's got to be done on a reasonable basis. And it might be that he gets the slice of the first 10 years of development, but you need to make provision for the next 20 and 30 years, and won't worry me after that. It won't worry me after 10 or 15 probably, but and just remember that the road reserve is only so big. So you can't just keep putting infrastructure, and that's one of the problems you got in Mulwala, that everybody that's developed in recent times is running I don't know how many times some of our sewer gets pumped in Mulwala. It goes from this manhole, picks it up and it pumps it to the next one and the next one, and then another rising main comes in. It's become a nightmare to try and, the whole thing nearly needs packing Mulwala up, move it out and redevelop it, to be quite honest. But yeah, just be mindful that whatever you do, it's got to make provision to go forward into the future.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering, and I think this morning, with a compliment, Director, because all her work that showed, that we saw how it all played out. The information was never forthcoming. They didn't have any financial work to fall back onto, to cover ourselves, to cover council, to cover the community. It was just a shambles. We sent that message to them, and we're not going to put up with that. We want good development. I'm looking at this one a little differently. I understand it's down the line, but I see that our staff have put good guidelines there. So what I'm feeling is, if our staff have put those guidelines up for us, test the water and say, we know where we're at. We're fair dinkum. We know this, and this, and if you can do this, like, there's room that we can negotiate. So we've already put that out there. If we do take on an opportunity to negotiate with them, surely they'd know where we stand. And because our lines are hard and they're direct. So I'm just feeling like testing the water and bringing a bit of negotiation in. And obviously it's got to have water mains, et cetera, for this purpose. But I just feel one thing we're doing is we are showing, yes, what we're saying is we want development, but do it right. So I'm just wondering whether it's worth leaving that door open and going ahead with a bit of negotiation.
And I tend to echo that and come off the back of what Director Carmichael and Appleyard have been saying. We have got to try and change the picture for developers for our shire. And if we don't change the picture by whether it's going to an agreement or be seen to be making an effort to make this thing happen, we aren't going to, developers want to come here. There are going to be too many prima facie cases of this happened, that happened, through the fact that we're going to do it right. But My personal opinion is that I think we've got to change the way we're doing it. We know the infrastructure's not there, but have a go at making it right. Councillor Longmire.
I think there's a distraction here in regard to you insist on doing it right, as the director has proposed, to the developer when the application was being made under the rules and terms and conditions and the terms of reference. Everything's there in front of them. And you insist that standard has to be applied. What more can the staff people do other than give the opportunity for the developer to come forward under the terms and conditions that are in our policy? That's all they can do, and that's what's been done. What we're trying to feather nest now is...
So you're suggesting, Councillor Longmire, that we go into negotiation?
Sorry?
Are you suggesting we go into negotiation?
No, I am not insisting. I'm going with the recommendation because, as the director has pointed out, if it goes back to the planning panel and there's a refusal under the opportunity, they can reapply. Then you renegotiate again with the rules that we haven't changed. It's their attitude or whatever they are proposing has to come to where the standard is that it's been applied.
It's a I see it, the way I see it differently is that our staff put us in a good position this morning. They've set those guidelines. We're now throwing the ball back at them saying, okay, we'll negotiate, but you know what to do. This is what we expect. So you either play the game or you don't. It doesn't really matter how long it takes to us. They're the guys that are developing it. But what we are saying is we want development. We're showing them that we want it, but are you going to do it properly or not? If you're not, it's going to be a no.
Okay, any further comment, councillors? We've got a motion there from Councillor Meagle and Law that council decline the voluntary planning agreement offer associated with development application 2020-37 as financial risk associated with the offer and cannot be adequately defined, and therefore it's not considered to be in the public interest to accept the offer. All those in favour?
Call a division being planning matter, yeah.
Against? Motion's carried. Mr Mayor.
We'll just get we wouldn't have got all those. Did we get all of them?
Don't get to run on before the end of the game.
We just kept the names down again for that vote. Sorry?
6.
Dave was looking up the video. So 4, yeah. It was Councillor Law, Longley, Longmire, Meagle,
Wales.
Wales, and against.
We're going to break for lunch, are we?
Who knows?
White tree.
Breaking for lunch, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Mr. Neil?
Yeah,
One more.
we better come 12:30.
One more.
I've got to go.
4, Longley, Longmire. Thomas against. Sorry, councillors, thank you.
Out in the game.
Well, I think so. I said that was. That's what.
What time do you like?
I've got to move to 1 o'clock, so I'll go to
Yeah, we'll be breaking up.
Yeah.
It's only 12:20.
We've got engineer.
Oh, sorry. I'm throwing out because he told me lunch was at 12. I said, no, I didn't.
So, sorry, I just want to.
Lunch is at 1.
Lunch is at 1.
Oh,
Just at one.
so we can knock them over.
Lunch is at 1 o'clock, councils, by the way.
Fair enough, we're right.
So, sorry, what?
Page 68.
Up to me, aren't we? You're finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
68.
That's all.
She's retired her.
So just finished?
I'll start drinking.
Well, thank you. You've had a massive day and well done. You did a really good job. So much appreciated. So now we'll move on to Director of Engineering Services.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 10.1 is the report of the progress of the works program for August 21, which is there for notation, and happy to take any questions.
How was her lady?
So
Lady
moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by Councillor Longmire. Question, Councillor Thomas.
Yeah. Of course, it's going to be about roads, isn't it, Director Carmichael? It's always a hot topic. Thank you to the staff who have been out there spraying and slashing. Greatly appreciated by all and sundry out in the bush, which is fantastic. I just really wanted to receive some commentary from you today, and I'm thinking this might be the right moment, is that I've been doing some correspondence with the representative for the New South Wales Grain Harvest Management Scheme, which Federation Council are very much part of. I was really after a more update report than this one. which they tell me it's pending, but I'm thinking it would have been like nice to have it on the table today for discussion. I'm just wondering, with such documents as these that are produced and the figures, and I don't need to go through the figures today. I mean, this is a public document and has been circulated, and I'm really happy to circulate it on again because I have received it from a few sources, so that's really handy to have. We are, in terms of movement with grain harvest, and not even beyond grain harvest, but throughout the calendar year, we are sitting at one of the highest LGAs in terms of movement across the landscape. How does documents as these have influence on our delivery program?
Which one have you got, sorry?
The New South Wales Grain Harvest Management Scheme.
Yeah, what year?
Oh, well, this one is actually July 2019 to June 2020.
Yeah, I think that's the latest one.
It is the latest one. As I said, I've been corresponding with a lady and on the phone to her, a lady called Leanne, who is going to keep me in the loop when the next one comes out, which will be very interesting again. Yeah. But as you know, what's ahead of us in the next 3 to 4 months is huge. So I just really wanted to know how you use such information in terms of
the
your
classic
planning.
example where it was used, we sat in on a video conference the other day. There was the general manager, myself, and Jared and Emmerich, and that was a group of consultants that have been employed to look at the feasibility of upgrading the line from the Rock to Boree Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And we went into that, and I think we got a fairly good, and we actually mentioned that document. I've since sent that document to that particular lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she was she came back to me the other day and said she was very thankful that they had that background stuff, and we're not nearly the top, we're miles above. We are the top.
Yeah, we are.
In fact, in that document, I think it says we produced 16%.
Yeah.
And that was at the end of the drought.
And to think, that
20%.
we're comparing ourselves to, places
20?
like
16.
I thought it was 20%.
That one's 16. Oh, that was at the end of the drought. So it changes each year, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Because obviously in that year there was no grain harvest up.
Just to give you perspective, this is like other bigger centres, which I would have thought, like places like Narromine and those bigger centres, west of Dubbo, I would have thought they would have outweighed us, but obviously not. We are sitting, and just to get your percentages here, deliveries per region for Riverina, which Federation's is 68.94%. So, I just really want to have, what influence these have in that.
We certainly use it. I use that with RMS, or Transport for New South Wales. We use that document there to say, look, and one of the things we did hint that it would be great to open the line between Boree Creek and Oaklands, which I didn't, but what we did push in the end was to say, well, if we can't get that, can we get the road upgraded? Because there is a lot of grain that moves from one silo to the other and either goes to the eastern seaboard or goes down to Geelong. So, they're certainly valuable documents, and you'll be pleased to know we did sign up again the other day.
Yeah, good.
I didn't realise we had to sign up every year.
Yeah, that's the way I interpret it too. It's something you had to actually buy into. Not that it's
we opted in again the other day. I don't know why we can't do it for 5 or 10 years or something. We're quite happy to do it.
And with these kind of documents and these figures, then when it goes to advocate on behalf to either state and federal governments for more roads funding, is this where you're getting some of the figures from?
Well, we even quite often we'll send those type of documents with it.
Because obviously, as we plan into the future, as we know from our budgetary constraints within our roads network and keeping them maintained, we're going to actually have to do that more. So, okay, thank you for your time.
We need a bit of return on our GDP. Okay, was there any other questions with that? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Against? Carried.
10.2 is a report on the Capital Works program, which will get a bit of a boost now that some of the carry forwards that we talked about before will come into this and help fund a bit of additional road work.
Excellent. So can I move for that, please? Moved by Councillor Longley, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. Any questions or comments? Or did you want to mull over it a bit more? Put it. All in favour?
Right.
Over.
Against? Carried.
Item 10.3 is a report on the special projects. You'll note I ran this report for some time when the pool was under construction and the All Abilities was under construction at Mulwala. The intent of this was just to wrap up those two projects now that we're very close to having final costs. And as my fellow director mentioned before, we are, as part of this recommendation, actually I got a bit more generous than Joe. I gave an extra $800 and something, I think, but she hasn't accepted yet. So the pool came out with an underspend, and the All Abilities came out with a overspend of $147,000. So that's therefore notation. Well, there's a recommendation there that we probably covered that, Joe, have we, by the other recommendation with the, although this one just says that that's what it is and where it's going to go, so maybe we just move them the way they are and they tie together.
Question?
Okay, moved by councillor Longline,
Yeah,
seconded by
question.
councillor Law. Question, councillor Longline?
Yeah, did I see somewhere in the report that there was still some funding owing for a sponsorship process?
Yeah, you did.
Which would cover that more then, wouldn't it?
No.
No. Oh, okay.
Sorry, you're saying that 200 will cover the 100?
200, yeah.
Well, if I add the 200 in, you're up to 348.
Okay, yeah.
So we haven't, at this stage, we haven't received
Righto.
the 200.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? If not, I'll put it all in favour.
All right.
Against, carried.
Item 10.4 is seeking a budget amendment for a technical officer waste and resource recovery position. Again, I won't go through any, it's a position.
Moved by councillor Kennedy, seconded by councillor Law. Any questions or comments? I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried.
And 10.5 and 10.6 are submission of minutes from section 355. We have the Low Square Management Committee, and it wasn't there, but I just any risks or stuff coming out. Oh yeah, there was some issues raised there.
Question?
The risk and issues raised are numbered 1 to 5 there. On page 84 of the report.
I'll get a mover, moved by councillor Longline, seconded by councillor Wales. Question, councillor.
In regard to the scoreboard at Lonsdale, is that all happy now?
Next one.
That's in the next one.
Next one.
That's the next one.
Oh, sorry, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right, that's good. There's
Further questions?
just a question, Mr. Carmichael. There's a non-compliance there relating to a container put in there that's promised it has to be painted when it went in. It's, I don't know how many years now.
How long?
The cricket club keep saying, yeah, we're going to do it, going to do it. It's still not happening. They're thumbing their nose at council. And that seems to be typical of their attitude at the moment.
I'll make a note of that. That needs to go into this report. Do you want it recorded in this report or?
Make a comment.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
And 10.6 is the Lonsdale Reserve Committee, which everybody's happy with where the scoreboard is, I think.
Moved by councillor seconded by councillor Thomas. Questions or comments? Councillor Longline.
Yeah, I've just seen something in regard to the minutes there somewhere that there was a vote on it, and it was just by a mistake, which is.
I will say this particular committee do get a bit passionate about their deliberations, but it's all in good intent. I was down there yesterday, actually. They're doing work on their new timekeepers box and storage sheds and that, and so that's all come along well. Actually, all the grounds are looking great at the moment, so providing I can keep them out of floodwater, I'll be happy. Well, that one down there's all right, but a couple of the others might get. We'll see what happens. So.
Water polo.
Any further questions, councillors? All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
That's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Steve. we'll plough on a bit longer. We've got,
Lunch at 1.
bit of time, yeah.
Yep.
So we've got item number 11, notice of motion, questions with notice.
Thanks, Chair. 11.1 is the question with notice, and then we have several notices of motion. But if we deal with 11.1, Councillor Longmire, and it's there in the report, a question with notice regarding the mayoral minutes, the January ordinary council meeting, condemning the Victorian government snap lockdown, and then questioning the decision, or more our communication, following the New South Wales framework. But Councillor Longmire, do you want to speak to that first?
Okay.
Yeah, I might just get a move with someone.
No, sorry, it's just with the question, you don't have to.
Oh, okay, righto. Yep, thank you, Councillor Longmire.
Yeah, there's no action that I'm suggesting in this at all. And besides that, the other point is that no discount towards A, the New South Wales state government, and B, the local state member. I want to make that clear. But the confusion and the reason I asked the question was that it's assembled in the background that I've put for the question. And when we when I reflected on the mayoral minutes that we had back in January, and my research tells me that if adopted by council, mayoral minutes become a resolution. And so with that understanding, I was sort of blindfolded looking at the notes that surrounded back at 6.1, the border closure by the Victorian government. And it said in part that some of the comments were in that report, the snap decision by the Victorian government to close the border to New South Wales, effectively when it was, delivered a devastating blow to many. And goes on to say, more specifically, for border communities on the New South Wales side, this has caused devastating economic impacts to so many businesses reliant on the increased visitation. It is also causing extensive social, mental health impacts from the financial losses and social impacts such as the family disconnections that flowed on. Having said that, I assume that it was a logistic policy of type that we would always have an opportunity to discuss it as a council with a snap lockdown, which occurred on the 14th of August, which remember was a Saturday, and our August meeting was the following Tuesday. That's the disconnect that I couldn't put together. And so I'm not going to dwell on it in any shape or form, Mr Mayor. I just thought I wanted to get clarity in regard to the then opportunity where it was supported by your good self in comment, in the community newsletter and other forms of publication. And certainly that's where I'm coming from, with no discount of animosity or anything. Get the understanding.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And thank you for the opportunity to give the understanding for that. Yeah, firstly, to approach that, my understanding, back in January, we were dealing with COVID, direct COVID. And from a lot of the Australian Local Government Association meeting, we had the opportunity to be explained the difference in the mutating COVID disease. So back in January, we were dealing with just COVID. What happened in August? The Delta strain came out, which is 4 to 5 times more contagious. It broke out in Sydney. The numbers built up quick. Shortly after, we were getting traces in our local government areas, such as next door at Gindra, like Greater Ham, through those areas, at Canberra lockdown. It was travelling at an enormous rate. My personal belief is the tracing methods we were behind. The government and health was behind. They had to get hold of this Delta strain to see where we're up to. The only way they could do it was lockdown. When I made my comments in the newsletter, I spoke to a lot of people that day that were concerned, etc. But my comment was more about what the people, their opinions were, that it just needed to happen. We were dealing with a totally different entity. So to catch up with what was going on, to try and lock down that new Delta strain, which we're still battling with, we're just coming out of, more extreme measures had to happen. So I wasn't going away from the policies council as such, and I can see how you could take it, will read into it that way. But I was fortunate enough to get a call from Justin Clancy 12:35 that day a text to basically just give you a heads up that it may be happening. And it was that rolled out quite funny because I got confirmation that it was happening about 10 minutes past 2 that afternoon. So I was still in limbo and all that period. But in the meantime, it came out on Justin's page and also Helen Dalton's page about 1:30 that it was confirmed to have the lockdown. So I suppose when you're looking at the situation, I do have council has a position, and in this case of COVID, I still believe, I stuck with the council's position, but if you read that article in that August newsletter, it was more that the people that I spoke to understood that this lockdown had to happen. But even taking it the other way, I think I understand that we're dealing with it, like the book's not, they're always saying we never had a COVID book. It's a disease that we've never dealt with before, ever. A pandemic, and it's changing and it's mutating, and the next lot of strains are still there behind this, after following this Delta. So it'll be another book, it'll be another course of action. Maybe that may not happen, but it has happened with the Delta. It's mutated and it's pretty serious. So that was my position then, and it was probably just to give the community a little bit of security about what was going on. But my point was I was grateful that finally Justin in a lot of his work has tried to give us a little bit of warning. Like these, we haven't had any opportunity of warnings at all from anything that's gone on, and he's tried to. And on top of that, we've done a lot of work, and I said today, this morning, we have these lockdowns, and the border's getting affected every time. We've got the border bubble that locks down every time Melbourne and Sydney lock down, both states. So Justin's doing a lot of work, and we've been working with him to get more of an LGA approach, so that if there's nothing out in the country, we can still operate, our economies can still run, until such time, a different approach at such time as if an LGA gets it, then act on it. So I'd have to say, I feel I'm still in line with what council's policies were, even though I think that should be a moving policy, because what happens back then will change depending on the strain and what's going on. So I think, I hope that was enough information to explain what went on at that particular time and why it was reported like that. What I did on that day, and it's my protocol, ring the general manager, ring comms, because comms is going to have to get ready to report whatever comes out, and that was the end result of that. Would that be satisfactory, council?
No, mate, I reckon it was a waste of time, that bloody question.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, if I can say that in reaction to what this gentleman's just said, it's an opportunity, and I'd ask the General Manager, which I did, in regard to the opportunity, and it goes across his desk for me, for him to say whether it's worthy to come before the council.
Yeah.
So to review what Councillor Longley's on about.
Well, I'll just go back, Councillor Longley, are you happy with that explanation?
Yeah, I think the other attunement that came into position was that for that fortnight, when everybody was to be locked down except for essentials, and everybody went and did that at the local grocery shop and all that, but there were businesses down Sanger Street. It was mentioned by somebody there's a dozen shops closed down Sanger Street in some of the discussion today. There were a lot of non-essential people that are business people in Sanger Street, and there'd probably other Mawala and how long as well, but certainly in Sanger Street, anybody that there were people that couldn't sell their wares and the people that weren't employed. And so that combination, plus also the entertainment industry, and there's lots of sectors that got affected for that fortnight. And that was where I was coming from in positioning the question, what I've done.
Yeah, and I suppose, and in my answer to that was, we saw an extreme case, and it just popped up at Wilkenya, and it just kept popping up. So my understanding was the tracing methods just didn't have the capacity at that time. They needed to catch it, find out where it was at, who was travelling with it, and then they could release the lockdown, so.
Thank you
We'll
for
finish
that.
up on that.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
just quickly, just so the staff, not to dwell on that, but the staff, especially our comms team, etc., more regard to Councillor Longmore's, I think, good point made, not on the specifics, but about council position and going forward on how we communicate, because we communicate every day and we grab the mayor whenever we can to get quotes, etc. So we felt, and we still feel, that there's nothing in the January, and this is to go forward with though, if the council want to, and I think as the mayor hinted at, if there's other strains or different situations, yeah, the January one was mainly about, well, it was about the snap decision on New Year's Eve, which council spoke about to send all the Victorians home, but the strong advocacy of that border bubble situation to keep that open as much as possible, and I think this is the one, Councillor Longmire, that never really has got traction, but that's a national issue, about writing to the National Cabinet to have a coordinated national response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know our Prime Minister's just come back from over there meeting with world leaders and walking straight back into this discussion about state irregularities, and that's just something we deal with as federation, as a country that's got a federation. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure we didn't feel in our commentary that we were adversing or opposite to a resolution back in January, because I think correctly so, Council have never endorsed a specific position on lockdowns, because it's not our laws. So we sort of have to, well, it's wise to go through the middle on all those issues, because there'll be people that probably were against it, there'll be people that were for it. So I think, yeah, it's just a tricky thing for our communications team as well to work forward to make sure, but just wanted to support our staff that we didn't feel the comments breached that January minute. So.
Thank you. All right, so that's, will we?
Got a couple of.
Are we supposed to be sitting down at lunch at 1 o'clock?
There's other meeting.
Okay. So we might
Deferred on that.
defer to, would someone like to move that, please? Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Oh, I'll see you after lunch.